the security dialogue.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You are welcome once again to the Security Dialogue. As we promised that we're going to bring you the concluding part of money laundering and terrorism financing. This time around, we're going to look at combating terrorism financing. That is, what are the measures that countries, nations, states are supposed to put in place to ensure that this kind of activity is dealt with or is prevented. Largely when it happens, it affects the youth fiber of our society. And so there has to be that much attempt to ensure that we curb this menace. And to do this again is Mr. Adib Sani. Mr. Adib Sani is the Executive Director for the Jatike Center for Human Security and Peace Building. He is a security analyst and a foreign policy expert as well. I mean, he's done a lot of work when it comes to terrorism and counterterrorism. And so he's going to help us understand how we can combat terrorism financing. You're welcome once again to the studios of MT International.
My pleasure always.
I mean, we had a lot of calls, I mean, coming through to the studios of the first part that we had with you. And so we couldn't wait but to, I mean, continue with this concluding part for us to understand. After we profess or we talk about some of the causes and the impact of this, we need to also have the measures that we need to put in place to make sure that we are able to prevent some of these dangers that we talked about. So combating terrorism financing, what are the things that you're supposed to do from the local level to the national level, to the regional level, and to the international level, taking into consideration, and you are an international relations person, so taking that one into perspective so that together within our continent, we can have some assurances of the fact that we are able to live peacefully. We will not have this, we don't go and sleep and wake up or thinking of somebody bombing maybe Accra Mall or something of that nature. What are some of the things that we are supposed to do? I mean, from policy to its practicalization and all of that.
Well, first of all, let me state categorical, even though I know what I'm about to say is quite contentious, that most of the finances and the weapons these terrorists get are from, interestingly, state actors. Not just non-state and sub-state actors, okay? Because, for example, I mean, a lot of these groups operating in Syria, Somalia, northeastern parts of Nigeria, etc., are funded either by states or through agents of the states. I remember some time ago, Al-Nusra Front, I think they've changed their name into Jamaat something in Syria, was seriously defended by the US.
Wow.
I mean, I remember there was this video that went viral on social media showing Al-Nusra Front's commander killing a Syrian soldier. I mean, this is quite gory. Cutting open his chest and chewing his heart.
Wow.
And believe it or not, you had US defense officials seeking to justify what had happened. All right, but today they seem to have fallen out with these groups. But nevertheless, there are also other means these organizations are able to get their finance. And for example, Afghanistan, the Taliban is so rich, you know why? Because they sell opioids from the opium plant, you know, and they have readily available markets for it. And these terrorist groups in Mexico, the Sinaloas and all that, they also sell, especially to the American market. And there are instances they are able to catapult the drugs across the walls or use homemade submarines to move the drugs into US. Then when they sell the drugs, they don't move the money back to Mexico. What they do is they buy weapons. Okay. Even though they move some, they buy weapons and move it back into Mexico. Okay. So you see, there are so many ways they are able to make their money. For example, some terrorist groups in Somalia, they make their money by kidnappings, you know, because the streets is so narrow, they are able to hijack some ships, and undisclosed sums of money is usually flown into them. Okay, so to deal with it practically, we need to deal with it from the very source. Okay, and one of those ways is to improve intelligence. Okay, electronic intelligence, especially. The Dubai authorities, it took them quite a long time for them to get to understand, get to completely comprehend the mode of operations of Hush Puppy and, you know, his guys, okay? So if we are able to improve on electronic surveillance, build institutional capacity, empower persons or institutions who are supposed to ensure that this is not done, it would help. Like and I'll give you an example. For example, in 2016, there was a cybersecurity policy document that was passed by Parliament. But lately it's been reformed, like it's been amended. Good, that's the word. It's been amended. And that is key because a lot of these transactions start from the cyber level, the email scams and all that, and they're able to, you know, launder the money. Secondly, we need to nip...
A minute for me. I want to understand, when it comes to the cyberspace, how these monies are moved to those recipients in these crimes.
Okay, so you see, sometimes they create what we call shell companies. It is shell because there's nothing inside. It's not a company. But they create it to make it look like they are engaged in some business dealings, and they are able to open accounts in safe zones. They call it safe zone, like the Jersey Islands, Swiss, and all that. And all of these transactions are electronic in nature. And a lot of these scammers, even here within the country, I mean, I knew of some boys, they don't sleep at night because I used to live somewhere around where they operate. You see them shirtless on their computers, and they start at 2 a.m. And believe it or not, it is at that time you see them ordering pizza on motorbikes because they are working.
So indirectly they are also creating jobs for somebody.
Working, I'm telling you, they are working.
This is serious.
Motorbikes, yes, and they work from 2 a.m. to 4:30.
And these are youth, right?
Yes, youth who don't work during the day. They work only at night, maybe because of the time difference and all that. And Hush Puppy, for instance, a lot of his money laundering happens online, called email scams. You know, they are able to hack into your servers. They are able to hack into your, you know, system and do whatever they want to. And there are instances where even banking systems
have been
hacked, you know, and they are able to do some of these transfers. So if we build that institutional capacity, improve the laws. So for example, as it stands, the Small Arms Commission in Ghana, we are proposing. They don't have. You see, they don't have the powers.
I'm saying I'm asking whether it's functional because Africa is seen more or less like the hub for, or more or less the transit point for most of these, I mean, arms, drugs, and human trafficking, and all of this kind of thing. So here in Ghana, is that commission really working? Because they need to also contribute their quota to the issues that we are talking about. How is that functional?
Well, I don't blame them. It's not very functional, but I don't blame them.
Okay.
Because the laws constrict them.
Okay.
For example, if you are acquiring a gun in Ghana,
Okay.
there's no point you have to go to the Small Arms Commission.
Sure.
Meanwhile, they are supposed to be part of that process.
Yes.
You see?
Okay.
But if you look at the Arms and Ammunition Act,
Okay.
it says that the IGP is supposed to have a central register
Okay.
of all weapons in Ghana.
Okay.
But actually, the Small Arms Commission is also supposed to be part of that process and have the details. Unfortunately, the police, as we stand now, I'm sure if you ask them how many guns we have in the system or how many illegal, they wouldn't be able to tell.
Okay.
Okay.
Now let's you earlier you made mention of the state support or some state support that these groupings get in perpetrating their crime, and that one, for me, it feels like it emboldens them more, because then if you have that superior power to support you, then you are able to do more harm in this. But I want to find out, what do you think is the motivation for, let's say, an example, a nation like Ghana, and then we find out that there's a particular group that is perpetrating these heinous crimes, and then the state itself, maybe through its security agencies, indirectly will be supporting them to do those kind of things. What do you think? I mean, you are an expert, you are a practitioner, you are a researcher. What do you think will be the motivation for that?
One word: interest.
Interest.
That's all matters. That's all that matters. And
is it interest at the personal level?
For the state.
For the state.
Okay. And in diplomacy, we say there's no morality when it comes to state interests.
Wow.
So the interest of the state could be to eliminate an individual. It is morally wrong. But when you take a look at it from the what do we call it, the realist perspective, you'd realize that no, rather, since it's in the interest of the state, it's legitimate. Okay. There are so many groups.
The individual doesn't matter.
No, not really. Okay. For example, the US would say they are supporting some groups to fight other groups as a preemptive measure to prevent terrorism from being imported into America or exported from these countries. So they are dealing with it from source. Okay. So you'd get the US supporting one group in Syria, Turkey, they supports another, Saudi, another, Iran, another, and all that. So you see, when these interests comes to play, and not just Syria, even in Yemen, we know what is happening between, it's called the Bin Salman War.
Yeah.
Because,
and then in Libya as well.
Perfect. And Libya, we have General Haftar, and he has support from certain European powers, okay? And the Turkish are not supporting, they are supporting the UN-backed government, okay? So when all of these interests collide, it becomes difficult for peace to come. And you know, I always say, you see, the solution to the crisis in these countries are not in those countries. They are in the Oval Office, the Kremlin, the Turkish government, you know, those places. Once they say there will be peace, that's it, because then the blood, the lifeline comes from those countries. So if they stop it, trust me,
so we need to deal with that root. It's just like when you are dealing with conflict resolution and you put the tree there as in perspective as an example to deal with it. Then you have the branches, you have the trunk, and you have the root. So the problem itself is deep down there. So until you deal with that, then the surface is just you are just joking with it.
And you know, there are situations where your intelligence would want to just destabilize another country. Okay. Or maybe if there's a threat somewhere, keep them fighting. They would focus on each other and leave you out. You know, there are so many ways. Some of these things, you know, it's sometimes it is quite complex, but trust me, most of it has to do, most of the problem emanates from those areas. Strong forces.
Now, the other angle that I want us to look at, as we're looking at combating terrorism financing, I mean, you've given us very interesting point to look out for. I mean, for those of us, viewers out there, policymakers, and all of those kind of things. The youth. What are we supposed to do as a people? Because I know that most of these young ones are involved in this. I mean, some of them are as young as 15 years, 18, and all of that. What should be the policy line? And when I say so, I want us to look at it from not only Ghana, but when we take the sub-region, I mean in general, because I don't want us to live in isolation. And if we do so, then in itself you become selfish, right? Because you are thinking about if your neighbor is not in peace, definitely there has to be some overflow, like what happened in Liberia, and then we saw a lot of, people coming in as refugees, and you have to cater for them. By the conventions and treaties that we signed to, you have to cater for them and all of that. So what should be policy direction?
Okay. So according to the UN Population Organization, in 2016, there were about 1.3 billion persons between the ages of 15 and 24.
Wow, that is huge.
Yes, that is huge. But most of them come from these developing countries where there's conflict. Nigeria has the largest youth population in Africa. According to the African Economic Outlook, the youth population is expected to double by 2045. It is particularly exciting that you've brought up this issue because the youth is the strength of every country. However, it can also be the greatest threat to security because they are the most vulnerable. When you take a closer look, a cursory look at the plethora of conflicts we have, especially in Africa, you would realize that the youth are the active participants. The 2007 Kenyan elections, these vigilantes who played a very key role in the destabilization process, like the Mungiki, the Sambuant Land Defense Force, the Kalenjin youth, the Luo youth, were all youthful. Cote d'Ivoire, 2011.
That is very recent.
Good. The Young Patriots, and even in Ghana, the Delta Force, the Zorka boys, they are there, plenty.
The invisible forces.
Mostly
and all of those
the
things.
youth. And you see, it is disturbing. And that is why the UN, I think somewhere in 2015, came out with Resolution 1522. That points to the youth playing an active role. The need for governments to legislate, to change the ways they perceive the youth, to making them partners in the peace-building process. And that is key from the reintegration process, especially providing them jobs, to making them agents of change so far as peace building is concerned. So the youth can play a very, very important role once they are involved. But if they are not involved, then the bad guys would see them as a resource. They capitalize, they take advantage of their vulnerability, and the next minute you see them being with them.
I mean, this is very interesting. I mean, viewers out there, this week's edition is looking at how we can combat the financing of terrorism activities. And from the foregoing discussions that we're having, I mean, you cannot sit down and say that you are not concerned or it can come to you. I mean, our youth, as said by Mr. Adib, the working force. These are people that we look up to. They are going to take up the next mantle of leadership and all of that. And every child comes from a home. So if we do not pay much closer attention and support this cause, understand this dynamics, and probably help them, because some of them are already in it, and we need to identify them, I mean, through intelligence and all of that, and be able to help them to do that. But I know that we have the AU and the AU security architecture. I mean, and I'm going back to the fact that looking at our borders and all of that, how and what should we do? What are the measures we need to put in place? Because before one money moves from one point to the other, either through the internet or physically through some illegal means and all of that, and definitely it is interconnected. I mean, it's either between nations or between persons and all of that. At that border level, territorial integrity once again, what are we supposed to do to curb this menace?
Well, since the Berlin Conference, which sought to divide, especially Africa, amongst the various European actors, families have been torn apart, communities have been torn apart, because these borders you see are artificial. Okay. They are not natural. Okay. That's why you have Evers in Ghana, you have them in Togo, you have them in Benin. That's why you have Fulanis all around, because we're a single unit. Until the Europeans came in order to siphon us to the very core, to the very limit, they had to divide us. Okay? So the issue of border security has become very complex, because there are people in Ghana, on daily basis, they go to their farms in Togo. And
I'm told some of them, even whilst they are bathing, one part is in Togo and the other.
I mean, that shows how closely knit we are, okay? They move from one country to another. Unfortunately, the bad guys are taking advantage to do their movements as well, okay? Yeah. That is why there's the need for us to improve border security. Okay. But the question is, how do we do it? Yeah. Fortunately for us in Ghana, we have the National Boundary Commission, okay. Led by my supervisor, General.
I know you are
exactly.
In love with that man so much. And he's doing wonderful work.
Exactly.
I mean, the last time I saw him talk on TV on some of this, and it reminded me of my days in the military. I'm like, I wish I'm still wearing the uniform.
Major General Kuti. I mean, he's one of the few persons who would call you after a TV show and go, all right, you did well. However, this is where you got it wrong. And then break things down for you.
That's true.
So he's doing, I mean, they are doing a lot. They are going around all the border areas. And interestingly, Doc, there are some areas where it's not very defined. Okay. You don't know whether it's Ghana or Togo, or Ghana or Burkina Faso. I think it's part of the work he has to do. I mean, clear demarcation, so we know how to go about it. However, the bad guys don't come to the main border crossings, approved routes, and go like, knock, knock, open, I'm coming in. No, they use the unapproved routes. And the unapproved routes are so many. You can't, I mean, technically, you can't man it all yourself. That's why some resort to the use of technology, satellite technology, they use drone technology, so you can monitor, you can put under surveillance a large space of area. At a time. But the most important way, Dr. Sadiq, to improve border security is to involve the locals. If you move soldiers from Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, to a border area, they are not in a position to know, looking at your face, you belong to this community or you are from somewhere. But once through the chiefs, the religious leaders, and other groups involve the people, trust me, it will do a lot of magic. They know themselves. They know who is part of us and who is not part of us. And that is key. Unfortunately, for years on end, that hasn't happened. I'm hoping that this time around they give it much more credence. And like you rightly mentioned, intelligence. So you can imagine 50 trucks coming into Ghana carrying hundreds of thousands of tubers of yam. How, and an AK-47 is, how would you be able to tell? Are you going to offload or all? So the only way to tell is through intelligence. And I've been round. I've been round to these areas.
I mean,
and
when we were in Tamale, I mean, I saw a lot of impact that you've made there.
The military commanders tell me that, Adib, we rely on the civilians.
Yeah.
They would give us information. This vehicle with this number carrying this cargo has an AK-47 stashed inside, and that is how they are able to get it. If not, it's impractical. For you to subject even with the scans, they are able to beat it. Sometimes they put it inside fuels, the fuel tanker. They will put weapons, in it. How would you be able to tell?
So
intelligence is, and unfortunately for us, we have a very elaborate, decentralized intelligence structure.
Okay.
We have intelligence officers from in every single metropolitan, municipal, and district assembly area in Ghana.
Okay.
But the question is, to what extent are they trained?
Okay.
After the first training they receive when they are being recruited? Because yesterday's insecurity is not as today. These criminals keep changing. They keep changing their ways. So we need to train them. We need to resource them so they are able to do their work much more effectively.
I will want to take your final words, and then we'll conclude for the concluding part for this very segment. What will be your final words with this insightful information that you've shared with us? I mean, it's so knowledgeable, it's so educative, so informing, but the viewer will want to get something at the end of the day to equally take home. What will be your word, and especially to the youth?
Well, it is important to recognize that the security services cannot do the work alone. They need us. For example, in Ghana, the police-civilian ratio is 1 officer to about 900 Ghanaians.
Okay.
But in urban areas, it's even more staggering. For each police officer, there are over 2,000 Ghanaians. Okay. So you cannot have officers everywhere all the time. That's why we also need to play a role, okay? Let's be conscious. Let's cooperate with security services. When we see things not going right in our communities, it is our patriotic responsibility to report to the appropriate authorities. Don't be scared of false flags, because it does happen. You see something you suspect, then later it turns out that it's not what you think. Don't be scared. Just report to the appropriate authorities. These, terrorists, they are in our communities. We know them, they know us. Let us cooperate with the security services. So in the end, we would all be part of the security management process, not just for our personal persons, but our families and our communities.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Adib Sani. I mean, it's always a marvelous, encounter each time. I get to meet up with him like this. And if you look at the kind of information that he has shared with us, I bet you, if policymakers are listening, if parents are listening, if community leaders are listening, our imams, our pastors, traditional authorities, chiefs, queen mothers, if everyone is listening to us and you are watching us currently, these are the things that has been professed here we need to do to safeguard our community, and together we can live in peace. This has been the Security Dialogue on Muslim Television Ahmadiyya International. We've been discussing combating the terrorism financing in the sense that to ensure peace and to also protect even our youth from falling prey to the activities of terrorism, as a community which has sometimes been radicalized to the fact that most of these things that goes on, or most of these crimes that are being perpetrated, are relatable to the community. And when I say the community, I'm talking about the Islamic community. But we want to know that Islam stands for peace. And on the Security Dialogue, we want to digest the issues, we want to inform you, we want to educate you to understand security in other perspectives, including the religious perspective. And so this has been another wonderful program. Until we come your way, same time next week, this has been the Security Dialogue with me here, Sadiq Educhum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Stay safe and play your part to safeguard the security of your community. Assalamu alaikum.